What's going on YouTube, and welcome to Fresh Comic Stories, the channel where we cover different kinds of comic book stories. Today, we are going to continue our coverage over the reign of the Supermen. And this is the storyline that picks up after the death of Superman, where Metropolis gained 4 new Supermen. Where in our last video, we saw the first time how each Superman appeared in Metropolis. Except the Eradicator, we did not know where he came from. And the last time we saw John Henry, he had not made his steel armor yet. And so in this video, we're going to see how the Eradicator was brought back to life, and also see how John Henry made his steel armor. And so guys, I do hope you enjoy part 2 of the reign of the Superman. And if you do, please hit that like button down below and also subscribe for more comic book stories like this in the near future. But guys, I do hope you enjoy part 2 of the reign of the Superman. So in Action Comics number 687, we pick up at the Fortress of Solitude, where we see these service robots that Superman kept at the fortress trying to bring their master back to life, except they don't have Superman's body, meaning that they are going to make a new Superman here. And so when they are working on their project, it led to a being coming out, and that being of course being the Eradicator. Now this is not the origin of the Eradicator at all. The original origin of the Eradicator was that he was a machine made to keep Krypton safe. No one can come to the planet and no one can leave the planet. Now after Krypton blew up, he was out there doing a bunch of things in space, which I am not going to touch base on, but the most important part is that the last time Superman was around him, the Eradicator was a pure energy being, no longer a simple machine anymore. Except Superman was able to shut him down, and with him being shut down as an energy being, he was spread across the Fortress of Solitude as energy particles. Now when the robots were working on making a new Superman, their device just recollected the Eradicator and brought him back to life as pure energy once again. Now as soon as he comes back to life, he is trying to figure out what in the world is happening, and that is when he goes to the monitor and he gets bombarded with information about the death of Superman. And so with him hearing that, he freaks out because his sole purpose when he was made was to protect Kryptonian people, except it seems like he does not remember that he is the Eradicator. Instead, part of him thinks that he is Superman. This is where we see him go to the tomb of Superman, where of course the body of the actual Superman is at. Now the reason why he goes here is because right now he is pure energy. And since Superman has been on Earth for a long time, his body has stored a huge amount of solar energy. And so with that energy, he can take that solar energy and give himself a solid body, which we get the Eradicator we saw in our last video. Now we jump a few moments later, where we see the Eradicator back at the Fortress of Solitude, where we see that he made a device that will keep Superman's heart pumping, and so his body can keep absorbing solar energy, and the Eradicator can take that for himself. Because for him to keep his form, but also keep him powered up, because he needs the solar energy from Superman. Now while he is getting everything set up, when the service robots show him what is happening in Metropolis right now, the city is falling apart, making it seem like that without Superman, the city begins to fall apart left and right. And so this leads to the Eradicator leaving for Metropolis because he feels like he is the only one who can save the city. This leads to us getting a few pages where two things happen. The first thing is that the Eradicator saves this random lady from being mugged. Now, where Superman would stop this guy and hand him over to the cops, the Eradicator instead kills this mugger. He throws this regular guy through a brick wall, and he is dead. and this leads to a bunch of news reports stating that one of the new Superman, which is the Eradicator, is going around stopping crime, except he is killing people, which is a huge no-no, but it is happening now. This is where we jump over to Lex Luthor 2. Now, the reason why I said Lex Luthor 2 is because at this point in comics, Lex Luthor 2 was supposed to be the lost son of the original Lex Luthor, who appeared after his father died, except this is Lex Luthor pretending to be a son to himself. It was weird, but we also saw Supergirl. And this is not Supergirl as you know her. This was this weird being called Matrix, who came from another reality with the ability to shapeshift in the basic power set of Superman. 90 comics was a weird time, and not in a good way most of the time. But the reason why we pick up here is because Lex Luthor and Supergirl just found out the body of Superman was taken, but the cameras were not able to get anything on video because the Eradicator was in his pure energy form. Now, to close this chapter of the reign of the Superman, we pick up when an aircraft is falling out of the sky, and you had the Eradicator go and save this aircraft from falling on innocent people. Now, after he saves the day, this leads to Lois Lane seeing him and wanting to talk to him. She wants to know if this is Clark Kent, the man she loves. And so when she confronts him and questions him, you have him just say that it's hard for him to explain, except Clark Kent is dead, and now there is only Superman, and where he flies off, leaving her to wonder if that was Superman or someone else. Now we jump over to the Man of Steel number 22, and this is the first book where John Henry becomes the character Steel, one of the many Supermen we are going to see around Metropolis. Now right now he is telling a story to a bunch of the neighborhood kids, really a way to entertain the kids and keep them off the streets. Except when it comes to the time for the kids to leave and go home, when the kids get outside, a gang war happens right in front of them, and one of the gang members in the car during the drive-by kills one of the kids that John Henry was just telling a story to. Now, John Henry is able to save the other children before the same thing happens to them. And something to point out is that these gangs are using weapons that we saw in our last video. Weapons that are really powerful, but they were given these weapons by a mysterious lady. And we have no idea who she is at all. Anyways, you have John Henry try to stop the car full of the gang members, where he jumps onto the car, but the driver slams the car in a brick wall, crushing John Henry, which should have killed him, but he survives with just some injuries. This is where we jump over to the hospital, where we see John Henry is in bed recovering, but he gets visited by Keith Parks, one of the kids he saved, and the mother of the child. Of course, he asks about the family of the child who died earlier is doing, where you have Keith and his mom tell John Henry it's hard for them. You didn't have Keith wish that Superman was around so he could save the day. This leads into John explaining how Superman saved him once. And this is where we learn that Superman saved John Henry before he went off to fight against Doomsday. Where of course, this made the connection between Superman and John Henry, where John Henry looks up to Superman. But then we learn that the battle of Superman and Doomsday came back where John Henry was at. And their battle made one of the buildings collapse, and John Henry was trapped down under the debris for a long time, until our last video where he finally popped out of the ground, stating that he was trapped down there ever since the death of the Superman storyline, but got out when all four Superman started popping up left and right. This leads to the next day or later in the week where John Henry is now out of the hospital, where we see him now walking to his apartment complex to go home. Now we learn on the way home, the gang members who killed one of the kids earlier and crushed John Henry with the car in the brick wall have been following him and wanting to finish him off. And so while John Henry is down in the basement working on his steel armor as a way to honor Superman, the gang members try to burn down the whole apartment complex hoping to kill John Henry, except he is able to finish his armor and put it on and escape as well. And this is where we get our first appearance of John Henry as Steel. Now you have Steel go back and save a few people who were trapped in the building because of the fire, where of course leads to one of them going on the news and talking about him, how there is another Superman now. And with this lady being on the news, Lois Lane of course sees it and shocked to see another Superman. Except that is when she is greeted by Jeb Friedman, and I really hope I pronounced his name correctly. And this man knew Lois Lane for years and always had a crush on her. And with Clark Kent dead, he is going to try to take his place in her love life. And this is a subplot throughout all of the books of the reign of the Supermen. This is where we pick up with Lex Luthor too. And remember, this is Lex Luthor who is pretending to be a son to himself, which again is weird. But we see that he also saw the news report about the new Superman, and he is now intrigued. Also, he wants to know who is giving these gang members these powerful weapons, bringing in Lex Luthor to appear in all the books involving Steel. Now getting back over to Steel, we see him go after the gang members who killed the kid from earlier to finally get revenge for that kid and lock all of them up. This is where we get to see Steel in action, which honestly, it is pretty cool to see him kick some butt. But this leads up to the big moment of the book, where you have one of the gang members hit Steel with one of the new powerful weapons, then tell Steel that the weapon is called Toastmaster, which is a horrible name by the way, where we find out that apparently Steel, aka John Henry, apparently made designs for this weapon, meaning that someone took his designs and brought this weapon to life. And so you have Steel get back up and use some of his weapons to trap the last gang member to interrogate him, to ask him who made the weapons, who is behind all of this madness. Except that is when you have someone with a sniper shoot the last gang member, so he is unable to give out the name of who gave him and his fellow gang members their weapons. That is when we see a lady holding the sniper, and this is the same one we saw in our last video, who stated that she was the one who gave all of those gang members these weapons. Now on the last page of the book, we see Lex Luthor where one of his assistants is able to give him some information about her, stating that her name is the White Bunny, and the book closes there. And this is where we are going to end today's video. And so guys, please leave me a like down below and also subscribe for more comic book stories like this in the near future. Also, any suggestions on books I should read? Well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, I'm out of here and I will see you on the next comic book video. Later, guys.